The disappearance of Detective Sarah Walker sent the investigation into chaos. The once clear trail had now vanished, just like Claire Thompson. Was it a coincidence? Or had Walker gotten too close to the truth? The phone call had promised more than anyone could have imagined. There's more to Claire's disappearance than you realize. Much more. And then, as if the universe itself was conspiring to keep the truth hidden, Detective Walker had disappeared without a trace. A woman dedicated to exposing the darkness had become part of the very mystery she sought to solve. As the investigation into Mark Thompson continued, the questions only multiplied. The case was spiraling out of control, and now, with Walker gone, the pressure was on the remaining investigators to put the pieces together. But one question loomed above all others. What did Walker find? And was she silenced because of it? While the police scrambled to track down Walker, something strange happened. A new lead surfaced, but it wasn't from the authorities. It came from Lily. After weeks of silence, Lily Thompson, the youngest of the survivors, finally spoke. For the first time since Claire's disappearance, Lily agreed to meet with the detectives. The interview was tense. Lily sat quietly in the police station, her eyes wide, her hands clenched together. She was barely 6 years old, but the look in her eyes was that of someone far older, someone who had witnessed things no child should ever have to see. Lily told them everything. The night before her mother disappeared, Lily had overheard her father's heated argument with Claire. But it wasn't just a typical fight. It wasn't about money or chores. No. This argument was different. Lily had heard her father whisper something she couldn't quite understand, but the tone was unmistakable, dangerous. "I'll make sure you never talk to anyone again," Mark had hissed. "They'll never believe you." Lily didn't understand what he meant, but the fear in her mother's voice, the way Claire begged him to stop, left a lasting scar on her. But that wasn't all. Lily also mentioned something else, something that shook the detectives to their core. As Mark stormed out of the house that night, he had a duffel bag in hand, and it wasn't just filled with clothes. Lily had seen her father loading something heavy into the trunk of his car. The detectives were still processing this new information when another shocking discovery came to light. The missing journal from Detective Sarah Walker's office. It wasn't an ordinary case file. It was an encrypted notebook containing Walker's personal notes and findings. When the police cracked the code, what they found was astounding. Walker had uncovered a hidden connection between Mark Thompson and a notorious figure from the past. Someone whose name was not only linked to Mark, but to Claire's disappearance. Carson was the leader of a dangerous underground syndicate, a group that operated in the shadows of the criminal world. For years, his organization had been involved in trafficking, money laundering, and a series of violent crimes that spanned across multiple states. What no one knew, however, was that Mark Thompson had once been one of Carson's most trusted enforcers, a pawn in a much larger game. The journal revealed that Claire had stumbled upon a web of criminal activity, and she had been planning to go to the authorities with evidence. She had been tracking Mark's involvement with Carson, using her journal to document everything she found. Claire had grown suspicious of Mark's increasingly erratic behavior, and she had pieced together clues that made it impossible for her to turn a blind eye any longer. But in the days leading up to her disappearance, Claire had begun to fear for her life. According to Sarah Walker's notes, Claire had become convinced that Mark wasn't just hiding his involvement in the syndicate, he was planning something far more dangerous. As the detectives pieced this together, they realized just how deep Claire had been willing to go to expose Mark's dark past. She was trying to protect her children, yes, but she was also preparing to bring down an entire criminal empire. Just as the investigation seemed to be gaining traction, another horrifying twist was revealed. The duffel bag Mark had been seen with wasn't just full of clothes, it was full of documents. Documents that Mark had kept hidden for years, and not just any documents. These were the key to unlocking the entire organization's operations. They contained the names of people involved, locations, accounts, and illegal transactions. And what's worse, they revealed the organization's next target. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. Mark Thompson had been involved in something much bigger than just his personal breakdown. He had been operating under the influence of Michael Carson for years, and he had a plan to erase everything Claire had discovered. But here's where the case took another dark turn. Lily had known about the duffel bag. She had known more than she let on. While detectives had been investigating Mark's background, they uncovered surveillance footage from the local pawn shop. The footage showed Lily walking into the shop the day after her mother's disappearance, carrying a bag. But this wasn't just any bag. It was the same duffel bag Mark had been seen with. The pieces were falling into place, but nothing was making sense. Why would Lily, just a child, be carrying the evidence that had been used to destroy her family? Had she been a pawn too? Or was there something far more disturbing behind her actions? The answers to these questions were suddenly out of reach. The detectives had found the duffel bag, and they had identified the criminal syndicate. But just when they thought they were closing in on Mark, they got a phone call that would change everything. It was from an anonymous source, a voice they recognized. It was Sarah Walker. But she wasn't calling to give them information. She was calling to warn them. "They're watching you. You're all in danger," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Mark isn't the only one who's involved in this. There's someone else, someone more dangerous than you can imagine. And they're coming for you." The line went dead. As the case grows ever more complicated, the detectives are left wondering, who is pulling the strings behind Mark? And what did Detective Walker find out that put her in such grave danger? The phone call from Detective Sarah Walker had been the final piece of the puzzle, or so it seemed. Her warning sent chills through the remaining investigators. "They're watching you. You're all in danger." The case was spiraling out of control, but with this new information, it felt like they were on the edge of uncovering something monumental. Detective Walker's last words hung in the air, unanswered. "There's someone else. Someone more dangerous than you can imagine." But despite all the twists, the danger, and the mounting pressure, the investigation seemed to be at a standstill. Where was Mark Thompson? Where was Sarah Walker? And most importantly, what was the truth behind Claire's disappearance? It had been weeks since Detective Walker's disappearance, and the search for Mark Thompson continued, but with no significant progress. He had vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a trail of blood, deceit, and confusion. The deeper the investigation went, the more unanswered questions emerged. The police had pieced together his criminal history, his ties to Michael Carson's syndicate, his dark involvement in human trafficking, and his plan to silence his wife. But there was still so much missing. Lily, the youngest survivor, had been placed in the care of social services, but she was not talking. She had been eerily silent, and despite the efforts to coax her into revealing more about that night, her answers remained cryptic and disjointed. Why had she carried the duffel bag? What did she know about her father's criminal past? The haunting image of a small child unknowingly or knowingly carrying the evidence that could have solved the entire case weighed heavily on the investigators. Was Lily a victim of circumstance? Or was there more to her involvement than anyone realized? Just as the case seemed to be fading into obscurity, a crucial discovery was made. Hidden in the attic of the Thompson family home was another journal. This one wasn't Claire's, though. It was Mark's. Mark's journal chronicled his descent into darkness. It revealed his escalating involvement in the criminal syndicate and his growing paranoia as he realized that Claire was getting too close to uncovering the truth. There were chilling notes about his growing obsession with keeping his family under control and the lengths he was willing to go to protect his new life. But it wasn't just about his crimes. It was about Sarah Walker. Mark had mentioned her in his journal, not by name, but by role. He referred to her as the investigator and noted how she had been asking too many questions about his past. There were several pages describing the watchful eyes that followed Claire, the children, and even Sarah. Mark had known exactly what was coming. He knew that his wife and the investigator were getting closer to exposing the truth, and it was all too much for him to handle. The final entry in Mark's journal was chilling. "They're coming for me. I won't let them take me down. Not now, not ever." With this new evidence, the search for Sarah Walker intensified. It wasn't long before a body was discovered near the outskirts of town, buried under a pile of debris in an abandoned building. It was Sarah Walker. Her body had been left in an alleyway, her hands bound, her face frozen in a grim expression of shock. Her badge, still clutched in her hand, was the only thing that confirmed her identity. The police were stunned. What had happened to her? And why had she been left there? The gruesome discovery raised more questions than answers. Had Sarah been targeted because of her investigation? Was she the one who had uncovered the full extent of Mark Thompson's crimes before he silenced her? As for Mark, he was nowhere to be found. The trail had gone cold. Was he responsible for Sarah's death? Or had someone else, someone within the syndicate, taken matters into their own hands? The discovery of Sarah's body sent ripples through the small town. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers had all been shocked by the sudden violence and the scale of the operation Mark had been involved in. The community came together to support the surviving members of the Thompson family. Lily, the lone survivor, was placed in a new home and began therapy, but her silence spoke volumes. The Thompson story became a cautionary tale, a reminder that nothing is ever as it seems. A family that appeared perfect, a man who seemed harmless, a neighborhood that felt safe. But underneath it all, there was a hidden world of crime, deception, and betrayal that no one had seen coming. The authorities were left to pick up the pieces. The criminal syndicate had not been fully dismantled, and as the investigation dragged on, more questions were raised about how deep the corruption ran. There were rumors of other families connected to Mark, other victims who had yet to be discovered. Months later, an anonymous tip came in, and the police began investigating a new lead, one that suggested Mark was still alive. This tip pointed to a remote cabin in the woods, where sightings of a man matching Mark's description had been reported. The police moved quickly, but when they arrived at the location, they found it abandoned. What they did find, however, was shocking. Hidden inside the cabin was an extensive collection of photographs, documents, and maps that seemed to detail the criminal network Mark had been a part of. The walls were lined with pictures of unknown individuals, some of them marked with red crosses. At the center of it all, there was a note. It read, "The game isn't over. They'll never find me. I'll finish what I started. This is just the beginning." The mystery surrounding Claire Thompson's disappearance, the criminal empire Mark was involved in, and the death of Detective Sarah Walker remains unsolved. As more revelations surface, the questions only grow. Where is Mark Thompson now? Is he still alive? Still lurking in the shadows? Who else is involved in this criminal network? And most haunting of all, who can be trusted? As the investigation continues, the true story of what happened to Claire and her family, and what Mark was trying to hide, will likely never be fully understood. Some mysteries are just too dark to unravel. Stay tuned for the next chapter of this chilling, ongoing investigation. The answers may never come, but the haunting questions will continue to linger. Thank you for following this gripping case. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your theories in the comments below. What do you think really happened? And where is Mark now? The mystery isn't over yet, and we'll keep searching for the truth, no matter how dark it gets.